Hello, I'm Joanne Harris, and welcome to the second of my 10 mini seminars on writing, the writer's life, and the thing that we do. Now, yesterday we talked about the most important step, which is giving yourself permission to call yourself a writer. Whatever stage you're at, it is okay to say to yourself that you are a writer. It will liberate you. You should feel now that you're able to do something to start. And some of you have already messaged me to say, after a kind of block of 10 years, I've actually written a page, or I actually did something. I got a notebook and I wrote a few lines, and it feels great just to say, I'm a writer. It's okay. It's all right not to be a professional writer. It's all right to write for whatever reasons you want to. It's all right to write for pure joy, because actually this is what fuels all of us. Now, today I'm going to be talking about space, claiming your space, which is another really important step for anybody wanting to write at any level at all. Virginia Woolf said, a room of your own. That would be great. If you have a room of your own, wonderful. For at least 15 years, I didn't have a room of my own. I just worked on the floor on my laptop. Now I do have a space of my own. I'm lucky. I have a shed. You can see it's full of my junk, and nobody comes here. And that's really the important thing. The important thing is to have a place which is yours just for writing. Now, that might sound completely out of your league. If, like me, you live in the kind of house where it's just not possible to designate a special room for just one hobby, that's fine, because there are alternatives to this. Really, it's not so much about physical space as about making headspace for yourself. Nowadays, because in normal circumstances I'm not able to just work in my shed all the time, a lot of the time as a professional writer I have to move about a lot. A lot of my writing is done now on trains and on planes. Remember those? We used to go places. In hotel rooms, and I have managed to evolve a kind of technique to do that. Some of it is about creating headspace. Now, I have a technique which I think of as the portable desk. When I didn't have a room of my own, I would just take two items, and they were two familiar items that I would carry around with me everywhere. It happened actually for a long time. It was a candlestick and a pebble. Nowadays, I tend to still carry the pebble. I've replaced the candlestick, which tends to go off in airports and alarm people, by a very old and skanky tea coaster, which I love for various sentimental reasons. And I carry these things around with me. And when I want to set up my desk in a hotel or anywhere I am, in a cafe, I will put these two items here and here, and that will be my portable workspace. And I've got to the point where psychologically using those items helps me get into the zone. Now, you may or may not think that this technique is complete rubbish. That's fine. It's up to you to find your own way of establishing your space. If you can have a designated room in your house, if you can have a shed, if you can have a favourite cafe, that is all fine. The important thing is that you should go to your workspace with the objective of actually doing some work, because it's easy to have a kind of wonderful workspace and to go, well, maybe I'll make another cup of tea, or maybe I'll look at the garden for a bit, or maybe I'll go online and look at what's happening on Twitter. And all those things, when you have limited time, all those things will just eat into your writing time and make you feel that you've done work. And actually, when you look at what you've written, you haven't written all that much. So the important thing is to focus your mind, to get into the headspace. And that means controlling where you are. And much of this is about getting some kind of help from the people around you. Because if, like me, you've got a family and they have needs and they wonder what you're doing and they can just wander in and interrupt you, that's not a great thing. And so to enlist help from the people around you, I think, is an important step for any writer. Part of it is giving yourself permission to write. Part of it is giving yourself permission to ask other people to give you some space, physical space, and also time. And so it's important to say to people and to convey to your family, this writing, this is important to me. It will take up a certain amount of time, and I would like your cooperation. This isn't easy, particularly when you have young kids. You may have to shuffle your timetable around a bit. You may have to try and carve out that space for yourself and that time. What I'm here to say to you is that you mustn't think in terms of absolutes. Because people tell me all the time, you know, Joanne, I would start, but I don't have the special writing shed. I don't have the special writing chair. I don't have the special writer's hat and lounging pajamas. This is all rubbish. You don't need any of that stuff. You don't need the room of your own. You just need to be ready and for the people around you to be ready. And so look at your timetable. Look at the time you spend doing the things that you do and think, okay, where can I shave a little time off watching TV or going online or maybe getting up half an hour early or maybe going to bed half an hour later? Think about the time you feel most creative. I like early mornings. I like getting up before my family's up and, you know, getting a day's work in there and then being able to deal with the household things and other people and not feel too much like a hermit. But, you know, you might be quite different. You might have a different time of day when you are more functional as a writer, and that too is fine, because actually there are no absolutes here. There are no rules that you have to follow. There is no special magic wand that you need before you can start writing. All you actually need is the will to write, a little space, some time. And the time doesn't need to be very much. Remember, we are in some way training for a marathon here. You don't train for a marathon by running a marathon. You train for a marathon by running for a few minutes at a time and building up your aptitude little by little. And so here I'm going to ask you to try this. Try this one thing. Try to get into the habit for the next 10 days or so to write for 15 minutes a day. 15 minutes is something that anybody can find, anybody can shave off. 15 minutes, get up early, take 15 minutes. If you try to spend longer on your writing, if you try to carve out huge intervals of time, you'll find it really difficult. Because time kind of, the things that you do with your time, they expand to fill it. And so it's very hard to combat that inertia and to say, right, there is something that I want to do every day because I'm in training. So 15 minutes, you should be able to find that. And I don't want you to try to find some special space that you didn't have before, but try to allocate a space somewhere in your house, in your environment, on a nearby park bench, in your garden, in your spare room, just on the floor with your laptop if you want to, the way I wrote for years, and say, okay, in this space, I will write for 15 minutes every day for the next 10 days, and we'll see what comes of it. You don't have to have a brilliant idea for a novel, because a novel is a marathon. Instead, I just want you to write for 50 minutes. It can be anything at all. You can find a writing prompt online. There are lots of them. You can write in memory. You can write something that happened to you yesterday. Anything at all. Just write about it for 15 minutes every day. Try to make it the same time every day, because that will help embed your habit. And make sure that the people around you take it seriously, if you can. Say, these 15 minutes, they're going to be as important to me as you doing your yoga practice, you playing on your game, you reading a book. I don't want to be interrupted, because interruptions are the worst. And family can be the worst for interruptions, because they think, I'm just interrupting for a minute. You can always go back to your writing. And that's not true, because when you've got into the zone, when you're really flying and you've got an idea, that will just puncture the balloon that you're in, and you may not be able to get back to work at all that day. So make sure that the people around you give you that space and that time, just that 15 minutes of interrupted time, and try this. And tomorrow we'll talk about actual plotting. We'll talk about actual structuring of a story. But first of all, you need to get your personal space, your headspace, the space involving the people around you sorted so that you can have a comfortable working routine. So I want you to try that. And tomorrow I hope I'll see you again. Bye-bye. Till then.